I already had a workflow I trusted for reviewing code. Claude and Codex going over each other's work, because two different models catch things one of them never will. What I hadn't done was move that idea earlier, to the plan itself before any code exists. That's what this skill does. First, it interviews you properly, a dozen questions one at a time, no skipping ahead, and it's not a quick process. Then it hands the locked plan to Codex, which steers into it round after round, looking for the edge cases and constraints that usually only surface mid-implementation. I tested it building a real feature on my own site, and the review caught something that would have shipped broken. Single model planning would have missed it. Let me walk you through it. Let me back up because I almost skipped the whole GrillMe family of skills. My actual day-to-day is unglamorous on purpose. For most tasks, built-in plan mode is enough. When something is genuinely big, I reach for superpowers, which earned its place. That's the whole toolkit. I don't try a new skill every week. I never touched the Ralph loop, and when GrillMe went viral across YouTube a few months back, I watched it sail right past me. Relentless interviewing sounded like a lot of friction for problems I was already solving fine. What changed my mind wasn't the original skill, it was a variation built on top of it, the one that brings Codex into the loop. I kept seeing that one recommended on YouTube too, and it hit a nerve because reviewing code with two models is something I already do constantly. Codex and Opus going over the same pull request, arguing about it, catching things neither one finds alone. Seeing that same instinct wired into planning was enough to make me finally stop scrolling and install it. Quick background, because there are a few skills in this family and it's easy to mix them up. The original is GrillMe by Matt Pocock. The idea is almost rude in its simplicity. Instead of you prompting the AI interrogates you one question at a time, walking down every branch of the plan. Each question comes with its recommended answer until there is nothing fuzzy left. Here's the part people miss. Pocock himself steered coders away from playing GrillMe. In his write-up, the reasons are practical. On a real codebase, it got verbose. The shared language you landed on never got written down anywhere, and you had to re-explain the whole project every new session. So he points people to grill with docs instead. Same interrogation, but it also builds a living glossary file as you talk and writes down the architectural decisions as you make them. For non-code thinking, playing GrillMe is still great. For a codebase, grill with docs is the default. Then there is the Codex layer, and this is the skill I actually tried, built by a creator called Chase from the Chase AI channel, which is where I came across it. It takes Pocock's grill as Act 1, used as is, and adds a second act. It hands the locked plan to Codex for an adversarial review before anything gets built. That second act is the whole reason I bothered. It's the same approach I already use for code review, two different models checking each other's work. There are two flavors. I used GrillMe with Docs Codex, the fatter, more thorough one. To install, I pasted his GitHub link and asked Claude to set them up globally at the user level rather than per project. Done in about a minute. Links in the description. For the demo, I went back to React Leaps, the project I've used in previous videos. A small Astro site full of articles about React libraries. I had a backlog of changes, so I dictated the whole lot into a single grooming session. A mobile hamburger menu, because the new light-dark switcher had stopped fitting on my phone. A most viewed articles view, sorted by popularity. View tracking shown on each article card and inside the article itself. And the schema migration tool, so future database changes could roll forward and back cleanly. Then it went to work on me. About a dozen questions, one at a time, each with a recommended answer I could just react to. And for the menu, it drew little layout sketches so I could actually see the options instead of imagining them. That sounds like a small thing. It wasn't. Picking a layout from a sketch is far easier than picking one from a paragraph. The best moment was when it talked me out of a feature. It researched the project first, came back and pointed out that my database setup already owns its own schema and applies changes on push. So the whole migration tool I'd asked for was solving a problem I didn't have. I'd gotten sidetracked by something I was dealing with at work, and the interview caught it up before it cost me anything. I dropped the feature on the spot. Act 1 takes real attention, and then it goes quiet because Act 2 is where it stops talking to me and starts arguing with Codex. Good moment to mention. If this is the kind of things you're into, subscribe and come join the Discord. Links below. People watch and vanish, and the Discord is where the actual conversations happen. This is the part that runs without me. Claude writes the locked plan to a file and hands it to Codex with one instruction: be a skeptic. Find the race conditions, the security holes, the wrong assumptions, and end with a verdict: approved or revise. Round 1 came back revised with 12 findings sorted high to low. And the structure here is the part I like. Claude is the arbiter, not Codex. It reads each critique, decides what's fair, and this time it accepted all 12. Rewrote the plan, logged Y, and sent it back. Codex kept finding more, fewer each round, and it took 3 rounds before round 4 finally came back approved. The interview had already done the big structural work. It caught that the article pages sit behind a CDN cache for an hour, so counting views on the server would miss most of them. That pushed the whole design onto a client-side beacon. What Codex added was the stuff that breaks quietly. My favorite. The plan had a check that rejected any request that wasn't proper JSON. Sensible, except the browser's beacon sends plain text by default, so the check would have rejected every real view. The plan looked correct and would have counted nothing. Codex also caught a hard-coded site URL that would have broken tracking on every preview deploy and a counter increment that wasn't atomic. None of it was exotic. It's the kind of thing you find in week 2 on production, not week 1. And the one doing the catching wasn't me. The AI planned the whole feature. I just answered questions and watched 2 models argue about the answers. If I'd been planning this by hand, the medieval way, some of those edge cases would have shipped, and I'd met the rest later in production at the worst possible time. The only part I can take any credit for is the shape of it, and barely. This is just my code review workflow. Claude and Codex speaking at each other's work moved earlier to the plan. That's the part I should have thought of sooner. With the plan locked and approved by both models, the implementation itself was quick. About 14 minutes, and most of it ran without me. Near the end, its own verification step tried to compile the TypeScript, hit a few missing properties, and fix them on its own. Once it patched these, the project compiled and the logic held up. The visuals did not. The icons were fine to begin with, but in the mobile menu the theme toggle came out as a plain blue toggle theme text link. It had kept the same wrapper the icon button uses, then dropped text inside it instead of the icon, which is where that stray rounded highlight on hover comes from. The icon was sitting right there, it just didn't use it, and it never asked. The view counter also landed slightly below the date instead of in line with it. Small things, but the kind you notice instantly and the model apparently doesn't. Fixing them was trivial, a screenshot and a sentence each. Drop the text, use the same icon toggle the rest of the site already uses, and move it up by the close button. Pull the counter up a few pixels. Done. And this is the part I keep coming back to. For visual work, it's almost always faster to look at the thing yourself and say what's wrong than to set up the agent browser and wait for it to look. The agent browser earns its keep when you walked away from the computer. When you're sitting right there, your own eyes are the fastest verification tool you have. Great at logic, blind to anything visual. I have to mention something that happened while I was making this. Right in the middle of it, Fable 5 came out. The big leap forward release, the one everyone has been waiting for. The kind of model that builds something genuinely complex overnight while you sleep. People were giddy, and it landed right as I sat here planning a mobile menu with Opus, so the question hung over the whole video. Does a model this much smarter make all of this pointless? I tested it and 2 things stood out. First, it's expensive. Roughly twice the cost of Opus, token hungry and slower on top of it. I had it on max effort and at one point it spawned a whole swarm of agents to generate SVGs. On the $100 plan, that tore through my limits in about 10 minutes, and it wasn't even quick about it. Second, and I found this funny at the time, under some conditions Fable would quietly hand a request off to Opus 4.8 instead, and tell you it was doing it. A safety fallback for sensitive areas like cybersecurity. Our SRE team tried to use it to find security holes in our own codebase and got bounced straight to Opus 4.8. Legitimate defense in work, our own code, and the shiny new model wouldn't touch it. And then I woke up to the news. I'd already recorded the voiceover for this section, I was sitting down for the final edits, and Fable was just gone. On June 12th, the US Commerce Department sent Anthropic an export control order, telling them to cut off access for any foreign national inside the country or out. You can't enforce that selectively on a shared cloud, so 3 days after launching their most capable model, Anthropic switched it off. Not just for foreign users, for everyone. If you're in the US on a paid plan, it vanished for you too. Every other Anthropic model kept running, only Fable and its sibling Mythos went dark. And the reason is what makes this video more relevant, not less. The thing that spooked the government was a so-called jailbreak. The jailbreak was asking the model to read code and find the flaws in it. That's it. That's the whole video. The exact workflow I just walked you through, two models reading a plan, hunting for the holes, is the capability that got the most powerful model on the market pulled off the shelf. Anthropic pushed back, basically saying that's not even special, every frontier model can do this. Didn't matter. Gone anyway. So the question I opened with answered itself. Does a smarter model make Opus Plus Codex pointless? The smarter model lasted 3 days. The one I was reaching for by hand, Opus 4.8, isn't touched. Still running, still doing the actual work, and right now it isn't even a choice. It's the only frontier option left standing. So no, I don't think this approach is obsolete. For work like this, a feature that isn't rocket science, Opus 4.8 with a Codex review is the same default. I'm shipping this video exactly as planned. The last thing I want to show isn't mine. It's from a subscriber, Dmitry Polivayev, who created and still leads FreePlane, the long-running Java mind mapping tool. He built his own flavor of planning called Spec Loop, and it makes a point worth ending on. The idea is to plan in small increments. Instead of one giant spec upfront, you write the spec for just the next small piece, get it approved, implement it with tests, then move to the next one. What makes it his is the rigidity. Every plan uses the same fixed set of fields: scope, motivation, research, design, test spec. The design is drawn out as diagrams, a class diagram and a sequence diagram, current state next to the target state. Coming from years of Java, he reads a whole plan faster as a picture than as prose. Like any planning workflow worth the name, it won't touch code until you approve the spec. It's a moving target. He just added a path that lets small changes skip the full ceremony, so it'll look different again by the time you watch this. But that's the point. He didn't go looking for the best framework. He built the one that fits his own head, and he keeps refining it. So here's the one thing to take from all of this. The interview is useful, and so the structured fields and the diagrams. But the part that actually makes a plan reliable is letting a second, different model tear into it before you build. A model reviewing its own plan is an echo chamber, and Claude in particular is well known for being bad at critiquing its own work. It tends to agree with whatever it just produced. A different model with different training and different blind spots questions the things that first one never would. And it does it while those things are still cheap to fix in the plan, instead of expensive to fix in production. You don't need this exact skill to get there. Use the one I used here, build your own like Dmitry, or just add a review pass to whatever you already run. Even on the $20 plan, a second option pays for itself. Two models took 15 minutes to converge on the plan. My cat took about 3 seconds to veto the implementation by lying down on the keyboard. Out of every reviewer in this whole workflow, she's the only one who can actually stop the work.